Good evening. I found a couple of paragraphs I wanted to read as sort of an introduction. With a declining birth rate and more than 1/4 of its population now over 65 years old, Japan has a major problem. Who will care for their elderly? By 2065, they are projecting that 40% of their population will be over 65. Japan's younger generation is hardworking and still trying to get ahead financially. Who is going to be willing to stay home to help their aging parents? One option is relying on foreign workers, but nationalistic pride has made this solution difficult, so once again, people are turning to technology. Today in Japan, you will find many rest homes using robots to care for their elderly. The robots speak with human voices, provide companionship, bring food and drinks, remind the forgetful to take their medicine, and are even capable of lifting patients out of bed and into their wheelchairs. These machines never complain, never get tired, never go on strike, and never ask for time off. As one proponent of this movement has said, people are risky, robots are safe. I have an idea. What if Faith Mission Home acquires similar robots? Before long, such robots can probably include scanners to check for areas of pain or other trouble spots in the students' bodies, greatly simplifying diagnosis and treatment. Furthermore, electromagnetic scanners could be employed to read their thoughts, greatly increasing efficiency of understanding and meeting their needs. No more mistakes, no more misunderstanding of needs, no more legal liability. Just think, all the staff workers at such organizations could be freed up to fill other roles at other organizations, solving their staffing shortages. But why stop there? Robots can now build structures and even install utilities and roofing material, and do a perfect job. DRS and CASP could build so many more houses and help so many more people. For both sides of the house, wouldn't it be much safer, healthier, and happier to avoid those messy, uncomfortable, taxing in-person relationships? No more conflict resolution required. Besides, you can look and sound so much better online. No more embarrassment at someone walking into your cluttered house or shop, and no more unpleasant reminders of someone else's health journey. You sisters who are so busy and weary from keeping house and training children could find much benefit from having robot helpers to assist with and even take over most of your duties. Brothers, do you ever find your work exhausting and miserable? Do you ever wish for a better way? Let technology fill in for you. Do any of you find it difficult to memorize Scripture and understand what it means? Fear not. AI is here to help you avoid that difficult task and tell you all that you really need to know. Why take time to agonize over decisions? Why exert the effort to think? Let technology make it easy to know what to do. Let's not leave the ministry out of this either. AI can prepare full sermons for you, complete with Bible references and a closing prayer. You could also set up a virtual counselor, freeing you from the need to be able to process and respond to others' situations. No more being awakened or interrupted by phone calls or texts from people seeking help. Anyone ever feel bored? Ever need to find something to do? I suggest that you just turn to the next news feed or the latest Facebook posts or the next photos on Instagram or the next project on Pinterest or the next neat video on YouTube or... Wait, maybe we do those things already? By now, I trust you realize I do not actually support or endorse all of these ideas. Yet these descriptions are exactly where our society is heading at breakneck speed. So our topic this evening, of course, is technology. One of A.W. Tozer's suggestions on how to have a personal revival is as follows. Quote, "Be serious-minded. You can well afford to see fewer comedy shows on TV. Unless you break away from the funny boys, every spiritual impression will continue to be lost to your heart, and that right in your own living room. The people of the world used to go to movies to escape serious thinking about God and religion. You would not join them there, but you now enjoy spiritual communion with them in your own home." He's speaking of through television. And that was decades ago, of course. But it hasn't gotten better since. The devil's ideals, moral standards, and mental attitudes are being accepted by you without your knowing it. And you wonder why you can make no progress in your Christian life. Your interior climate is not favorable to the growth of spiritual graces. There must be a permanent improvement in your interior life. Maybe we have escaped the negative aspects of radio. Perhaps we have successfully navigated the area of television. Possibly we have not been unduly affected by newspapers or other print resources. But how are we doing with computers and phones? So next, let's talk about a definition of technology. What is technology?
A tool or an invention.
Yes, and those are very broad categories, aren't they? But that's true. Technology is a very, very broad subject, a very broad area of life. We use technology every day. Probably dozens or even hundreds of different forms of technology. What are some of those forms?
Shovel.
A shovel.
A sweeper.
A sweeper. Mm-hmm.
Kitchen appliances.
Kitchen appliances.
Cell phone.
Cell phone. Yes, every object we use to assist us is technology in one form or another. It's been described as an extension, somehow, of human capabilities. Pencils, pieces of paper, silverware, shoes, fingernail clippers, screwdrivers, I had shovels, and so on. Even a stick shoved into the ground as a row marker qualifies. So some of the principles involved in a consideration of technology apply to almost any form of technology. Some of the benefits and dangers of electronic technology apply to some other forms of technology as well. But since electronic technology seems to be the most concerning at this time, I've chosen to focus there. In thinking about this topic, I came up with some potential benefits and some potential dangers of current and near-future electronic technology. There may be some overlap between some of them, and neither list that I have is intended to be exhaustive, nor do I pretend that I have mastered the correct approach to this area. I simply share what I need to hear as much as anyone else. However, I would like to hear from you first. What benefits and dangers have you observed of electronic technology?
One of them is the ease of talking to somebody with not even really talking to them. Does that make sense? In other words, you could message somebody rather than taking a lot of time to get there, and instead of taking the time to explain yourself, you can do it short. But they don't hear your voice. That's the downside.
So is that a benefit or a danger?
Oh.
Yes.
It is somewhat replacing personal relationships.
Definitely.
We think we're more socially connected, but not on the level of common friendship or communication.
The ease of communication across the world is unbelievable. I think that's a benefit.
Yes. If used wisely. Almost any of the benefits can become a danger if they're not used well.
Would it be safe to say that the enemy doesn't come up with anything new on his own? He takes what's already implemented and twists it and makes it vile?
Yes, he either twists or imitates. Those seem to be the two main approaches. You may find a few examples of areas where maybe he is deliberately and obviously opposing God's ways. And there are some who embrace that, Satanists, for example. But for the most part, go ahead.
I believe his herald of hope is getting the gospel into restricted countries through technology.
Yes. Yes, that is definitely a benefit. While we are thinking about possibility of a benefit becoming a drawback or a danger, an example of a helpful aspect becoming harmful if overused or used improperly or simply having unintended consequences would be a wall around a city. That form of technology is thousands of years old. It was meant to keep enemies out. But what if a fire began inside the walls? All too often, not enough people could get out through the few gates, and many of them died in the blaze. It was generally a benefit. It was meant to be a benefit, but under those circumstances, it turned out to be a detriment. Perhaps an electronic example would be spell check. If you rely on it exclusively, what happens to your communication ability if you don't have your electronic device with spell check? What if you're trying to write something down? And yes, I do have spell check on my computer. But I try not to use it exclusively and use it without thinking, without remembering how to spell things. In the last few years of my work in the area of engineering, computers were being relied upon for more and more of the design work. Humans were increasingly being relegated to data entry. What if the one entering the data does not understand the equations and processes and other factors involved? Could the results and reports be understood and interpreted accurately? I once read an article where the author said he was just waiting for the day when something would fail catastrophically, and the computer would have said it was just fine. Or take live streaming. It would be easy to expand the list of reasons to use it to include unnecessary ones. Perhaps eventually being absent more than present, even when we really could be there. Are there any other benefits or drawbacks that come to mind?
Being weather dependent, I benefit greatly from the increased accuracy of rain forecasts.
Yes.
But with that, especially the younger generation, we're losing the ability to predict weather.
Absolutely.
The old timers, there was numerous sayings, weather sayings, that were at least somewhat accurate. I well remember though, visiting with an old farmer, there was this dark cloud coming up, and the radar looked like it's going to rain hard as soon, and the farmer said, nah, it's not going to rain. When it come up that direction, it never rained here, and I didn't believe him. But he was right. And later I thought to myself, never argue with a person who's been studying weather for 40 or 50 years. So yes, I benefit from it, but we're also losing.
Yes. On the other side of that, I have heard of someone who consulted their phone to find out that it was raining. I think it was as the first drops were starting to fall. You should be able to see the approaching shower if it's a heavy enough rain, but that would be an example of relying on it more than you need, perhaps. And even with the sophisticated methods, God does still show us once in a while who's really in control of the weather. I read about a greenhouse worker who was out, I think it was Montana or something like that, or Wyoming, anyway, one of those western states. And the weather had been unseasonably warm for several weeks, cloudless sky that day, and the forecast was for partly cloudy the next day. Overnight, 4 feet of partly cloudy fell from the sky. And it didn't melt, not all of it melted until next spring. Now, that's not to say that we can't be helped by such things. Don't misunderstand. But they're not infallible. They're not perfect. Go ahead.
What Michael was sharing, so you don't get the benefit of being on the job and it's raining and you decide to just stay there and get wet because we're here anyhow. He just doesn't go.
They've done that.
Are you saying it could discourage work? Or at least perseverance?
If you don't know that it's going to rain, you show up on the job and we're here anyhow. We're just going to stay and get wet.
Yes.
Because we're here. But if
Yes.
you saw it on radar, I'd never go.
Yes.
Can you think of any other job that you can have out there, you can make so many mistakes and still keep your job? In other words, people that forecast the weather, and yet, I'm part of my expression, we're stupid enough to keep listening to them. I mean, we don't know any better, so we're gonna trust them for what they say, but yet they keep getting paid. I'm guessing they get paid for what they're telling us. And yet they're getting wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't do any better.
There are actually some other fields, some other areas of life where there is some extent of that as well, but that's another topic for another day.
There is one thing with it, you can get more done by technology, but how are you using that time extra then when you get it? Because the speed you can do it versus doing it otherwise. Whether it's at the workplace, we have robots there, and I don't wish any one of them away. Whether it's a brake press, welders, or whatever. I would put them against anybody that welds in that plant, okay? You can't get welds from a human from that. We might doubt them, but the reality is they do a good job. But it also does away with workers then too, or can, or else maybe those workers are standing around rather than working.
Perhaps sometimes it isn't necessarily the technology itself, the particular one in question itself, that is so much an issue. Perhaps it's simply how it's used and who is affected by it, and how they're affected, really. You could include that as well.
So are you suggesting that we should maybe not be driving our cars anymore because that is electronic? I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go with electronic apps, but we don't want to hit the areas that we might be engaged in. We get the ones that we're not involved with. But what that is, that creates other jobs for other people, because you don't know how to fix it anymore. Maybe you do. Right?
No, not me. Not me. Things like that, I wasn't necessarily going to get into that specific of an area, but things like that, one thing I would say is there are advantages and disadvantages, and those need to be weighed out, and you need to decide with biblical principles in mind. You need to decide, is this something that is a net benefit or a net detriment? Is this something that is helping me or hindering me? And that's not necessarily a once-for-all answer either. Not only does technology change, but our situations change, our needs change, people move in and out of our lives. So various seasons of your life, the answers may be somewhat different for different aspects of technology. I wanted to go through some of the potential dangers. We've touched on some of them already. It allows agendas to be subtly advanced, speaking specifically of electronic technology. For example, through customizing search results to reinforce what you already believe, or gradually altering results over numerous searches to deflect you in a certain direction. It's not neutral. The people who programmed it have their own worldviews, they have their own agendas, and for the most part, those are ungodly. And so they are not interested in furthering your spiritual growth, not interested in people hearing and believing the gospel. It cripples communication and compassion. How many times have you had to send multiple messages or even call someone to clarify what one or both of you actually meant in your text message? We already talked about a little bit, it can act as a crutch, spell check, even your calendar, things like that. Hinders thinking and reasoning ability, especially for praying and studying the Bible. One way it does that is because they want you to scroll without ceasing. They want you to see the next thing that will capture your attention. They want you to move from one thing to another, thinking only shallowly, if at all. They appeal to emotions rather than to your intellect in many cases. detracts from and even precludes real friendship and true intimacy. In human relationships, intimacy is a process of rapport building that enables parties to confidently disclose previously hidden thoughts and feelings. Intimate conversations become the basis for confidences, shared knowledge and feelings, that bind people together. Developing an intimate relationship typically takes a considerable amount of time. It is both the ability and the choice to be close, loving, and transparent. Without it, there is no true basis for a meaningful relationship. I'll read that again. In human relationships, intimacy is a process of rapport building that enables parties to confidently disclose previously hidden thoughts and feelings. Intimate conversations become the basis for confidences, shared knowledge and feelings, that bind people together. Developing an intimate relationship typically takes a considerable amount of time. It is both the ability and the choice to be close, loving, and transparent. Without it, there is no true basis for a meaningful relationship. I have an example of that I found, an account I found in a book. A friend of mine was eagerly waiting for her best friend from childhood to become a mom, and awaiting photos of the newborn. She waited and waited. 2 weeks passed. She couldn't wait any longer, so she called her friend again and asked, "Hey, what's going on? Where are those pictures? I can't wait to see your son." The new mother responded, "Oh, I just assumed you went to my Facebook page. They've been up there the whole time." My friend didn't have or want a Facebook account. She recounted to me the strange effect this had on her. "It was weird," she told me. "Here was my best friend sharing one of the most important experiences of her life with 400 people on the internet weeks before I got to see it. She doesn't even know most of those people. I thought we were closer than that." My friend's disappointment may seem odd, but this wasn't just about being able to see her friend's baby. The event somehow altered the nature of their relationship. In a very real way, this experience eroded some of the intimacy of the friendship. In some ways, it is akin to sharing a physical relationship before marriage or with someone other than your spouse. Secrets, things held in common by just two, are a strong component of the glue that holds them together. There's also such a thing as emotional adultery, but that could be another topic as well. Okay. Electronic technology can shape our worldview, including our understanding of God. As I mentioned, all of the information programmed into AI has some connection to or basis in humans' thoughts, ideas, and agendas. Even if it were not ungodly, it would still be subject to human limitations, including fallibility. Information overload keeps us from being able to focus well on what is truly important. How many of us are able to spend much time alone with God as Jesus did? Is technology hindering that? It promotes isolation, even insulation, from people and problems. For example, rather than investing sweat equity and emotional capital into a ministry, we can now more easily than ever throw money at it from afar and move on. It functions as a substitute for God and is even openly promoted as such. One leader in wireless capability says, "If I can operate Google, I can find anything, anywhere, anytime," which is why I say that Google, combined with Wi-Fi, is a little bit like God. God is wireless, God is everywhere, and God sees and knows everything. Now we don't just have Google. We have Alexa. And we have AI. Feels even better as a substitute for God. Caters to laziness to the point of openly rejecting God's command to work. One of the stated goals of those developing electronic technology, especially AI, is that everyone will not work anymore. Enables easier deception, cheating, theft, etc. Now you don't have to wait long hours in uncomfortable circumstances to get a prize-winning photo. AI can generate one for you almost instantaneously, and it will look even better than what you can get in real life. That's actually happened. People have won contests with fake photos generated by AI. Also, there was a warning issued recently against trusting without verifying pictures of plants when ordering seeds, because some of the pictures were generated by AI and the plant depicted did not even exist. It was not even a real plant. Promotes boredom with and escapism from real life, even more quickly and effectively than drugs, alcohol, or sexual immorality. Encourages impatience with circumstances, with other people, and with God. If we don't get an instant answer, we will be tempted to look elsewhere because of what electronic technology has conditioned us to expect. Discourages personal responsibility. Another goal by some who are promoting it is, you will own nothing and like it. When there is nothing for which you are a steward, how diligent, thoughtful, and intentional are you likely to be in your decisions? If you don't have responsibility, are you going to take life seriously? Feeds discontentment, envy, and covetousness as we observe pictures of others' perfect lives to which our life compares most unfavorably. Blurs or even erases the line between reality and unreality. How long will search engines still differentiate between AI results and normal results? Enables the haves to unintentionally leave the have-nots out of the loop. We've already talked about that a little bit with the lady who is waiting for pictures. I have chosen, and Sarah fully supports this, to not have internet access, including email, in our home or on our phones. Neither can we receive data attachments as to texts. Multiple times we have not heard about some event or opportunity until it was already past, and multiple times we have been sent pictures that we are not able to access. I don't mean that as a complaint, still less as a rebuke. It's just the reality of it. And I don't mean to hold us up as something special or wish for lots of extra effort. It's just, again, it's just the reality of it. And I'm not always as considerate of others as I should be either. But that helps me understand why I should be. It allows those skilled in using technology, especially youth, to have knowledge and even a code language, such as in texting, that allows them to conceal their intentions and actions from those who do not understand it. Roles are reversed so that now the children know more than the parents. This contributes, among other things, to less respect for one's elders and less attention paid to their wise counsel. It has a tremendous potential to devour large blocks of time and thus prevent God-given roles and responsibilities from being adequately carried out. And that's by design. As I mentioned, they want you to scroll without ceasing. So just briefly, I want to add a few benefits. Some we've already mentioned, such as the swift communication. It's also efficient and cost-effective in a lot of cases. No more phone trees, fewer postage stamps, and so on. Efficient storage of information. How many books would you have if all the information you could access was in printed form? It extends our reach. Advice and expertise from almost anywhere, not merely your local community. I say that advisedly, guardedly, because that can also be a significant detriment. But in some cases, it can be quite helpful because our experience in a small area can be limited enough that we miss something important. Less laborious calculation, especially in fields such as engineering or accounting. But again, I mentioned you need to have the understanding of what you're looking at so you know if it's a valid product, a valid result of your calculations. Also, garbage in, garbage out. Faster data entry, we already talked about that a little bit, and the easier editing with spell check and such. Often I can type faster than I can write, especially if autocomplete were enabled, something like that. Also allows for those in the overflow seating area to still hear and see. Provides a way for those who are ill or otherwise unable to attend a service to still have somewhat limited participation. We already talked about that with live streaming and such. And we already mentioned it enables some to access the Bible who otherwise could not do so, such as those who are illiterate or those who live in restricted access countries. You may have noticed there were far more dangers and drawbacks than there were benefits. I find I have to be cautious and deliberate in my use of technology, electronic technology. What would one reason be for that? Have you ever heard of someone who is addicted to using a hammer? Have you ever heard of anyone addicted to using a spoon? Or a shovel? Or a needle and thread? Why? Why could a coworker of mine some 15 years ago refer to his BlackBerry as a crackberry? Because it was so addictive even back then. Any thoughts?
Because you didn't use discipline. And that's in other areas of life too. You know, you need to use discipline in what you're doing. And you got addicted too, I understand that, but if we don't do this, whether it's eating or whatever it is, we need to discipline ourselves in all areas of life, and it's not only technology. It's a way of life.
What I'm wanting to focus on is there's something specific about electronic technology that we do run the risk of getting addicted to it, whereas we wouldn't get addicted to a shovel or a toothpick or a needle. That's part of it. Could another part be that it is closer to seeming as if it's alive? Could it be a better substitute than the simpler forms of technology to a real live person or to the living God? Think about that. A poem and just a few more questions that I don't expect an answer from now in closing. This is from Robert Frost. A time to talk. When a friend calls to me from the road and slows his horse to a meaning walk, I don't stand still and look around on all the hills I haven't hoed and shout from where I am, "What is it?" No, not as there is a time to talk. I thrust my hoe in the mellow ground, blade end up and 5 feet tall, and plod, I go up to the stone wall for a friendly visit. How much has digital and electronic technology affected me? And once we have honestly and thoroughly answered that question, here are two more. What should I do about it? And what will I do about it? Turn to Psalm 115, please. Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but unto thy name give glory, for thy mercy and for thy truth's sake. Wherefore should the heathen say, Where is now their God? But our God is in the heavens. He hath done whatsoever he hath pleased. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths, but they speak not. Eyes have they, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Noses have they, but they smell not. They have hands, but they handle not. Feet have they, but they walk not. Neither speak they through their throat. They that make them are like unto them, so is every one that trusteth in them. O Israel, trust thou in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. O house of Aaron, trust in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. Ye that fear the Lord, trust in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. The Lord hath been mindful of us. He will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless them that fear the Lord, both small and great. The Lord shall increase you more and more, you and your children. Ye are blessed of the Lord, which made heaven and earth. The heaven, even the heavens, are the Lord's, but the earth hath he given to the children of men. The dead praise not the Lord, neither any that go down into silence. But we will bless the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. Praise the Lord. So I was thinking a little more in connection to idolatry, and we see here the foolishness of idolatry pointed out in that back in those ancient times especially, people would form a representation of the false god that they worshipped. They would form it out of wood or stone or some kind of metal. And there are other passages in the Bible as well that speak of that, especially in Isaiah and some of the other prophets. And so, no matter how alive they made the statues look, there was no life in them. They could give them as realistic human features as was achievable, as they could do, but there was still no life there. Now, today, we face a similar principle, but maybe the manifestation of it is a little bit different. With technology, AI can seem to hear, it can seem to see, it can seem to speak, even if the little device has no human-like features that are visible. But it's still a potential idol. It can still function as an idol, and some of those who have developed it and are continuing to develop it openly admit that that is their purpose for it, that it could be an idol, a replacement for God. Now, there are other aspects to idolatry as well. It's not just electronic technology that can be an idol, of course, and there have been other conversations and other teaching about that in recent months here as well. But I wanted to mention one more thing from this psalm. Down in verse 16, Psalm 115, verse 16. The heaven, even the heavens, are the Lord's, but the earth hath he given to the children of men. Now back in verse 3 it said, our God is in the heavens. Now it doesn't mean that heaven or outer space or something like that contains God. God is infinite. He's present everywhere. but it's a way to think of him as greater, as higher, as being beyond us and beyond his creation. But it says in verse 16, the earth hath he given to the children of men. This is our home. This is where he means mankind to live. And I don't want to be critical in a wrong sense or judgmental, and maybe some exploring of other places like the moon or planets or things like that would be useful in some ways. But clearly the earth is designed for life. It's designed for humans to live on. And to try to go to another planet to live there could be another evidence of resisting God, another evidence of rejecting his provision and saying we will make our own way. So, something else to think about, I guess. And it might not necessarily be a conscious thing, but it could be expressed even subconsciously in efforts to do such things. So I talked a lot about the potential dangers of electronic technology, and I didn't spend a lot of time on an antidote. And I don't mean an antidote such as deciding to reject all use of technology. I mean an antidote that guards against the dangers of using it, or against misusing technology. I think that psalm provides one antidote in terms of thirsting for a close relationship with God, of seeking him, of desiring to see his power and his glory. And when that is your desire, you will tend to promote that in the choices you make, including in how you use the resources that are around you, even technology, even electronic technology. Jesus said, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." If you treasure God, your heart will be directed toward him. If you put effort into learning to know him, if you put effort into hearing from him through Bible study, if you put effort into speaking back to him in prayer, if you put effort into serving him, he will become more and more precious to you. He will become more and more valuable in your estimation. Now, you could also say something similar in terms of interpersonal relationships. Some of the tendencies toward isolation and pretense and shallowness and so on that can be fostered by electronic technology can be combated by time and effort and being present with people, building relationships with them. Now, some of these things, if we've not been engaged in them very often or have not put as much effort into them as we want to now, might seem a little difficult, might seem a little unfamiliar. I would find it hard to understand and probably hard to practice spending most of a night in prayer, for example. But I was also doing a little bit of reading about how technology affects our brains. And I don't want to get into a lot of the details of how that happens, but researchers have discovered that our brains are a lot more adaptable than was thought for decades. They thought it was more like a machine. They thought that once it was formed in your childhood, that it was pretty much how your brain was going to be for the rest of your life. But it turns out that there's something called neuroplasticity. Simply means your brain can change. Your brain can be molded and altered. And one way to do that is by repetition. If you repeat an activity, it strengthens that pathway in your brain. The more often you repeat it, the stronger the pathway, the larger the pathway, the more readily your brain can engage in that activity. And so it is with our relationships. The more effort and the more focus we put into a relationship, the more time we spend in it, the stronger that relationship becomes. And the easier it seems to be, partly because of how our brains alter themselves as a result of our choices. So that can take place in our relationship with God, and it can take place in our relationship with each other as well. So that's all I had.